Hi, and welcome we're in week 5, although I'm a little bit late getting the week 4 overview posted. So, week 5, just to let you know, I see that some of you have started posting. Week 5 is about short fiction and poetry, which some of you might enjoy a bit more than the poetry of week 4. Week 5 builds on the concepts of modernism. So you're still dealing with some of the same ideas that you encountered with your reading of poetry, but now you're going to be focused on F. Scott Fitzgerald, and of course Ernest Hemingway. We'll also be looking at a variety of different perspectives related to um, Ezra Pound, Wallace Stevens, Marianne Moore, William Carlos Williams too. And I think you will see in week 5 a bit of a kind of a, I guess you'd say, a comfort level with what you might have already been reading in your contemporary time period. These are some of the themes that we deal with. Week 5 does have a fair amount of reading and, of course, preparation, but this is because in week 6, which is kind of your finals week, there's no required readings or text. Week 6 is just you taking the midterm. I'm sorry. There is also, of course, a podcast for style. Just to let you know, your ProctorU midterm test, the midterm, will be opening up on February 8th, which is this Sunday. So remember, next week, week 6, you will not have any readings or any additional discussion postings. So as far as week 4 goes, I did see a fair bit of frustration when it came to the engagement with the poetry, and that is okay. Poetry is hard to interpret, and it does take a bit of, I guess you'd say, moving through it. Caitlin and Ahmed kind of bonded over that kind of, I guess you'd say, disturbing nature of it. I saw that most of you did really enjoy, like Kaylin, the in a station of the metro, because it was so short and captured so much, this imagism that you kind of pull up and chit chat about too. Nathan did a good job of proposing that poetry really is confusing, and figuring out the hidden thoughts or symbolism can be fun. Had a great observation about Marianne Moore's poetry about the passage, hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise, if it must. These things are important, not because a high-sounding interpretation can be put upon them, but because they are useful. And this moves mountains. Because for Nathan, he's saying that, it's just interpretation. It's a way to touch the reader. And I think that is something that galvanizes poetry, is that it is about touching the reader. And many of you did also enjoy, like Ezra Pound's In a Station of a Metro, Marianne Moore's work. Quanah mentioned that this period really did capture the changes and the shifts, and pointed out that Pound's Mobberly and The Wasteland were very hard. And those are The Wasteland is one of the hardest poems to read. The Wasteland really is more of an encyclopedia than it is a poem. It really is robust, and it takes a lot to kind of get comfortable with it. Theron mentioned that the poem references biblical concept, there's biblical allusions, and of course this is true. And I think thinking of it like an encyclopedia and not so much as a poem can help you. I appreciate Rico's observations about poetry is not as bad as we think if you just kind of get into it and explore it, and that's a good observation. Brianna mentioned that they were difficult, but there's a connection there, and she mentioned the focus on the river merchant's wife, a letter, because it really does have kind of a personal connection in it, and there's a sense of emotion that comes through. And Moneta mentioned that too. Christopher mentioned he found it very difficult, and like I said, I'm aware of that. It's a challenging overview, and we will counter poetry a couple more times in the class, but it does take a bit of practice to get yourself comfortable, and it's okay to express that frustration. I think Brooklyn had a nice kind of captured. Um, T.S. Eliot is a lengthy poem. It is about loss and attempting recovery. And I think that's a lot of what the poetry is about that recovery of loss. And many times when we're reading poetry, we always think about finding something. And so we're even in that impulse, we're thinking about loss. We're trying to recover meaning. And that is one of the major projects of poetry and of modernist poetry is at this time, 1914, we have really lost a sense of completeness and wholeness, and we're trying to recover it. So poetry kind of echoes this modern sensibility. Randall mentions the notion that was shorter, except for T.S. Eliot. It is, I like the analogy to a Shakespearean play because it is very robust and full. I also saw that many of you were doing a great amount of kind of back and forth, which is great. I love to see that you're discussing it. Hadia and Jennifer's exchange was really helpful because Hadia was not impressed with these readings and that she really had to kind of work to get through it and to struggle. And I think hopefully this week with the short fiction readings, you'll find a more exploded example of modernism. Now, Travis mentioned that he could follow this, like he could see something. He kind of understood that this was a poem. Understood that the In a Station of a Metro should probably not be in a collegiate textbook, and you're not alone in that discussion. That poem and those 6 little words have been more contended than any others. I also thought that Caitlin did a good job of kind of focusing on the connection of the destruction of war and how Western society is affected by this. And I think that is, of course, a great observation. Ahmed made some great use of evidence from the text. He put in quotes. His posting was fantastic. Thank you, Ahmed. Brittany, you had a good connection with modernists, and I really, if you guys are looking for some good examples, take a look at Brittany's exploration because she has a really good kind of focus on what modernism is, and she cites some great resources like the Norton. Richard, I think you did good with your observations. I like that you mentioned and gave a good frame for modernism. I agree that it is informative and eye-opening because but it does have some work and it does require a certain amount of giving. Emmanuel, I have nothing, that that does kind of fit what modernism is. It's that kind of frustration and futility in the face of everything losing meaning. Travis, I love that you mentioned about time traveling because his text does have a tendency to weave through all over, and that's also a good point. And then, of course, we had Jennifer's observation that the subconscious, and that's true because poetry unfolds that subconscious nature. Now, just to let you know, week 5, of course, you're going to post for this week, but then the following week, February 8th, midterm will open. If you look under discussions, following week 5, there is, of course, week 6, and week 6 has a study guide. The study guide is for the midterm. You can share and post your study guides here. If you do have any questions as you're going through week 5 or as you're preparing for week 6 and the midterm, please email me or call me or let me know. I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, and I look forward to seeing what you do with the short fiction. Have a great day.